And why is it still on? I have so many archives. Yeah. Oh, that's your
So we have like a special
Yeah, I did it like last week.
No, it's awful. No, because then I didn't understand why. I'm only understand this because I don't want them to get
My favorite is saying
being artists.
Hello, thank you for coming to my show. For my senior show, I focus mostly on imagination and imaginary landscapes, kind of creating like a sense of space in the artwork and using different materials to create a sense of depth and dimension. I really like painting landscapes, and I'm very inspired by nature, like trees and space and stars, and I like to put them in my artwork a lot. I also take from like textures that I see outside a lot and find random materials to kind of like replicate that in my paintings. And sometimes I also like to capture a specific feeling or mood in my artwork, so that when I look at the piece, I like feel that way, or I feel the same way that I felt when I had that idea. I also like to experiment with different materials just to give the painting like more of a sense of self, I guess. Kind of to add a meaning or a story behind it. I really like more like vague settings in my paintings, and like more like vague like senses of space, because then every time you look at a piece, or every person who looks at the artwork kind of has their own interpretation, or every time I look at a piece, like I'll see it differently. And just like with the coloring pages, just like thinking of new ways to create drawings, or to like put them in different shapes. And then also having people interact with the art. I really like nature, like I said, and a lot of the materials that I use remind me of things in nature. And when I make imaginary landscapes, I like to take from something I've seen, like if I find a flower that I really like, or a tree that I like, I'll put it in a drawing or painting of mine, but I'll like create a different world around it, or a space around it, kind of so it seems like there's a story behind it, and it seems like it's taking place in a new world, and it has like a meaning behind it. But sometimes it doesn't, and it's just, you know, how you're supposed to look at it, and you kind of have the feeling that it has a deeper sense. But it's really just the material that you use, or you know, like the shadows you use. And I really wanted to make art that people could touch, and that people wanted to touch. So kind of like just unusual materials, and collaging, and kind of like sculptural materials I really like using, because they kind of like pull you in and you want to know what they feel like. So, or just like thicker paint is also really nice to use, because you can create like a specific effect, or a mood, like a mood with it too. Yeah.
You said that you're inspired a lot by like organic materials. I find it really interesting because, you know, you use inorganic materials when you're making art. Is there any like inorganic materials that inspire you to use organic materials in your art, or like, or I guess a better way to phrase that is just like, yeah, is there like inorganic stuff that you find while you're in nature that makes you think about with nature in your work?
I haven't done too much work with like organic materials, except maybe like some little like collage outside, you know, with something. But it's something I want to do more. But I am definitely inspired a lot by inorganic materials as well, like walls, or you know, just any texture I see really inspires me.
There's this great interaction between space in existence itself, space within the piece, and then space like in the gallery space. And it's very interesting how you interact like with all of the spaces in space, like taking finished pieces and then doing the paint drying behind it, and then like adding on new layers of it. I think it's very transformative and speaks a lot to like where you draw your inspiration from.
Thank you.
I feel like too, when I'm looking at certain places especially, it feels like you, responding to what Sid was saying, like you found some ways to harmonize disparate sets of work through the ways that you're creating connection, either just through like relationship for what's hung next to what and the color, but also like this feels new, this chain and the silk flowers feels like something, like this new possibility opening up that feels pretty exciting. And I think it has to do with what you were saying, Sid, about like thinking about the gallery space and the way that that can speak to the space inside the work and on the surface of the work. Do you feel like working within this gallery space has given you a new way of thinking about how your pieces relate to one another, or how you want to integrate them through materiality?
It was kind of hard getting some of the pieces to fit together in the gallery because I do usually like to organize by color mostly, not always like materials or texture. But so sometimes I was making a piece specifically to match the one next to it, you know. But yeah, I do like curating and finding ways to, like the chain, just like tying these specific ones together. And then yeah, just like looking at them on the wall, you kind of think about more materials that you will use in the future.
So where does that lead you, seeing the way that you've worked with these in here right now? Like when you're thinking about the future?
I think my favorite pieces are like the ones with more depth and with multiple materials. So I would just want to find more 3D materials to work with, like something new that I haven't tried.
Maybe even thinking about taking something like the silk flowers, right, and like dipping them in paint or wax and like pulling them apart and like using them too could be really interesting. Like it feels like a logical kind of next step just based on what you have on the wall, you know.
It's interesting sort of also to look at the photograph of the tomato here. That's a photograph, right? Like, in the context of the overall show, looking at that turns it into something that is like almost looks plastic, right? Like in the context of the show, it looks like the color is hypercolor, and like the plant, and like the green is so green, the red is so green. There's like the graphic shade of your shadow, but then there's also like the vinyl plasticky siding behind it, and the contrast is super high. So it's like even something that is from the organic natural world in the context of the show is taking on a very plastic appearance. And I think that there's something really fruitful about that continuous back and forth between like what's a man-made, what's natural, and how those spaces sometimes really blur together, and how like in the context of our hyper like plastic world, how even something natural is put through that filter in our minds, like we see it almost through that lens of something digital, like, you know, I don't know. So I think that that conversation is just really interesting here, and like there's a part of the show where I feel like that conversation is just getting started in this like very final senior show. I feel like now it's in this environment, and then like now everything's talking to each other, and it feels like a start of something in a really exciting way. So yeah.
I have a question like related to that. Okay, first of all, I like what you said at the end about it being like the start too, because I think there's something really cool about endings being beginnings. Anyway, that's just too deep. But so I want to know about the process of this picture. Like, is it just like how did you take it? What was it on? Did you edit it? And like, what did you focus on?
So I took it using like a Canon camera, and the sun was hitting like from this side, and I took it in front of my garage. So I just noticed I was trying to take pictures for my photography class, just like a nice picture of the tomato, and then I saw like my shadow, and I've always wanted to like draw shadows, but I figured like picture would be a great way to capture it. And then like my hands, you know, when the shadow stretches, they kind of look like spooky, so I kind of just like went with that. And I really like the higher contrast because it also made it look a little bit scarier, and it made it look like fall somehow, you know, even though I think I took it to summer or spring. But yeah, just like playing with the colors gave it more of that like mood that I was looking for.
I also liked how you incorporated yourself into that picture. But I'm also noticing in the landscapes that there's some portraits, right? You have this one here and the other on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you in there somewhere as well?
They're not me. This one in the ocean is me, but the other ones aren't really me. I just like to do a lot of character designs and stuff. Sometimes they end up looking like me, even though I have someone else in mind. But yeah, I just like experimenting with different clothes and hairstyles and outfits and stuff, and like facial expressions, so yeah.
Thank you for letting us touch.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I'm very tactile, and
Yeah.
our painting class, I keep trying to touch people's paintings and they say stop it. Not in a mean way. I really appreciate all like the whimsy and everything. I love this little gnome. He's giving me joy today. And I appreciate that. Yeah,
Thank you.
just a lot of joy.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I've been through
There you go.
the whole race.
Yes.
This is definitely worth the
The rush, yes.